Well, hello, everybody. Tara Bachland here with the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. And we have a special, I would call it a class today, because anytime that Carolyn Jones shows up, you are going to learn something. And that I just love that about her. She does everything with a splash, and is you're going to learn something. So today we're talking about Juneteenth, but not only Juneteenth, but heritage, herbs, and healing. And I, for one, am very excited to learn and be at the feet of Carolyn and just learn what this is all about, and especially the herbs and healing part of this, of course, for the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. So thank you, Carolyn, not only for joining us, but I've seen the slides and you have some wonderful things prepared for us. So thank you.
It's an honor to be here to represent and to give some insight on this wonderful holiday.
Absolutely. So getting started with a splash, right? So I was going to ask you before we got started, but I didn't want to kind of spoil it in a sense, because there's something about asking the question for the first time when you're actually, instead of asking it quote unquote backstage and then asking it on stage. But are there any, so you're in New York, I'm in Minnesota. Are there any Juneteenth celebrations going on around you?
Oh yeah, all over the city. And probably in every state. You probably could find one in Minnesota if you looked hard enough.
Probably more towards Minneapolis, which I'm a good hour away. So I would love to hear along the way too, and I think you have some of that planned and how it's celebrated. But I'm going to step back, kind of more so just play the slides and ask a few questions here and there, but let you do what you do best, which is sharing and teaching. How about that?
Sounds great. So how you doing, everyone? Tara, I'll let you do the honors of giving my bio on behalf of Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great. Well, Carolyn Jones, in addition to what you see here, founder of the Healing Project, is an herbalist who embraces a broad perspective for self-care as a lifestyle. If you follow her on Facebook, you will absolutely see this in action. It seems like almost every day, or at least a couple times a week, you can see a post of Carolyn in some place. You're like, you must be well known in your area. You're always out and about serving the community and putting she really practices what she preaches, I guess, is what I see when she shares online. She's also the author of a couple books, Pick Up Your Bed and Walk, A Guide to Improved Health, and an affirmation book titled Incantations. We learned about you. I learned about you through Matthew Wood, who was absolutely impressed with your work in New York, particularly during the 2020 era of COVID. And it sounds like your skills, your talent, your grace was well needed and put to use as a bereavement chaplain in the New York State, that would be chaplain task force. And you hold certifications in herbalism, aromatherapy, reflexology, flower essence therapy, and acupuncture detoxification therapy. So your community is absolutely blessed to have you in their neighborhood, and including us who will be learning today.
I'm blessed to have them as well, yes. Mm-hmm.
So this just accompanies, I guess, what we just talked about. And Carolyn also teaches at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. We'll share in a moment, which you're likely watching this at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism YouTube or Facebook and so forth. And she teaches 3 wonderful classes, Black folk herbalism, culinary medicine, culinary remedies in the African American kitchen, and the other one.
Herbs for death and dying.
Herbs for death, dying, and grief, which...
Yes, those slides are up there for you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And there we go. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And for the next couple of days, we have a promotion on these, 50% off when you use the code Juneteenth Herbs at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. And I'll show you later on where you can find those. Very easy to find, of course, under all courses. Highly recommend these classes. If what you're seeing today is one of Carolyn's free presentations, you can venture to guess all the great stuff that you will find in her paid courses as well. And that's at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. A couple of those, at least the Death, Dying, and Grief does offer a certificate for passing the test as well. So let's see, what else do we have? I think this is where you take over, Carolyn.
Yes.
So thank you for, again, for joining us. And yeah, definitely check out what Carolyn has at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. And I'll be back later, but take it away, Carolyn.
Okay, thank you, Tara. So everyone, the slide you see is Discovering Pinkster. And you might say, but we're doing Juneteenth. What does Pinkster have to do with it? Well, it is a holiday that I recently found out about. And as long as we're celebrating, we may as well include all of the celebrations. And I found these Adinkra symbols, if I could get the next slide, which they mean except for God, authority, leadership, and charisma, and what I hear, I keep. And that was very insightful to me and spills over into what we want to represent for Juneteenth as well. So I recently went to Yonkers, New York, to the Pinkster Festival, and I wanted to title it Planting Seeds of Hope. It was a reenactment of what Pinkster Festival used to be. And as we move on to the next slide, we'll learn more. It was derived from the Dutch word Pentecost in the 17th and 18th centuries, and the festival was a traditional celebration in the Dutch colonies of North America, particularly in New York and New Jersey. And it was eventually adopted by African slaves, and they would come together and sing, dance. People, the slaves, would visit each other. Families that had been separated, they were allowed to come together to celebrate during that time. So they, of course, had music, dance, and food in this reenactment. You see my great-grandson, Prince, and a friend of ours. And there was drumming at this celebration. And as it was back then, it was a way to celebrate culture and community. And I'm so happy that these festivals have been revived so that we can have yet another holiday, and hopefully it becomes a federal holiday as well, so that we can even have more on the calendar to celebrate. Now, the reason why Pinkster is important is because we honor our ancestors, and we also highlight our historical roots, the resilience that we have as a people, and the vast contributions of African American citizens. And that's a setup of statues there in Yonkers, which I just thought it was a beautiful thing to see Prince staring at it. And he didn't really know, he's 7, he didn't understand, but it's important that the children get these images in their head so that as life begins to unfold and they begin to know their history more and more, they develop a deeper sense of self-respect for themselves and for their ancestors. Now, in moving toward the Juneteenth event, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, which declared that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and henceforward shall be free. That slide speaks for itself. So history shows that many rogue enslavers did not inform their slaves that they were free, even after Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas on June 19th in 1865 to announce the enforcement of the Emancipation Proclamation. So you can imagine the turmoil that it caused when the word spread, plantation to plantation, that this was indeed the case. What it made come to mind for me was, wow, well, I know my mother told me how my grandmother ended up dying from an abscessed tooth because white hospitals wouldn't accept her. That was in Athens, Georgia. But it made me wonder, well, what the timeline of African American health practices were from the 1700s to the present. So let's start that little journey. In 1619, slaves relied on traditional African herbal remedies. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? This is something that has traveled through time for us. In the late 1600s, enslaved Africans had no access to formal health care, so they used their traditional healing practices and knowledge of herbs. They came to the United States with knowledge of herbs, and then they combined their knowledge with willing Europeans and Native Americans to blend knowledge and ways of helping and curing one another. In the 1700s, enslaved people relied on their own herbal medicine and midwifery for childbirth. And 1775 through 1783, the American Revolutionary War leads to the involvement of African Americans in military medicine and the spread of their traditional healing practices. Now, the 1800s found African Americans continuing the use of traditional medicine, but they also began to gain knowledge of Western medicine from plantation doctors. I always like to talk about James Still, who was an African American physician, herbalist, and author. He's known as the Black Doctor of the Pines. He was so successful with his use of plant medicine that he was called upon to treat patients who had given up on Western medical practices. And I would like you to know that the James Still Foundation is located in Medford, New Jersey, and they have an education center there in his honor. One of his descendants have made it a landmark site, and go online, just put in James Still Foundation, and they have regular events on their calendar, and treat yourself to a visit. Last year, a group of herbalists and myself went there to meet with them and had a wonderful time. It's a great tour and everything. He said, Dr. James Still said, human beings, like plants, thrive best when being cultivated. And I know you realize that that's true. A person left to languish will suffer and eventually just die. If nothing else, if no other illness, a broken heart can certainly kill you. Now, we'll talk more about broken hearts later when we talk about flower essences. But from 1861 to 1865, although limited by segregation, African Americans participated in the Civil War as nurses and surgeons. And the history books don't speak of these contributions, but if you happen to come to New York, or if you're in New York, take a visit to the Schomburg Research Center at 135th Street in Harlem, and you'll be fascinated. If you set out to spend a full day, you won't leave empty in heart, soul, spirit, and knowledge. So we often wonder why there's this ongoing cynicism about the medical system, and it's rooted in the history of dark practices initiated by racist doctors over time. In the 1800s, Dr. James Marion Sims was dubbed the father of modern gynecology, but he heartlessly performed experimental surgeries on slave women without anesthesia. And somehow he became the father of modern gynecology. I don't understand it, and no one could explain it to me because I actually learned about him when taking a course with the Museum of Morbid Anatomy. And some books were recommended. And when I came across his name and I really got into the illustrations of what he was doing, it was heartbreaking, really. Heartrending, I would say.
You went into that in more detail in one of the classes with Matthew. It was black folk herbalism, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of information that has sort of been buried that really needs to come to light. And the only thing that will make it come to light is if people become more interested in supporting their libraries and reading more books, get the feel of the paper, not just go online. There's something about reading a text and holding a book and getting this information that becomes very organic. It gets in your DNA.
For sure. I think presentations like this and talks like this can help kind of spark that desire, but you have to follow through.
Right. That's my prayer. So in 1865, the Freedmen's Bureau was established to provide healthcare services to former slaves. And in 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson established separate but equal. And that just reinforced racial segregation in healthcare by essentially legitimizing the constitutionality of racial segregation. And that included the hospital, the medical system. So, we've come through a rough patch and are really still going through it. Next slide. From 1900 to 1920, the Great Migration began, and African Americans began to move north to seek economic opportunities and better healthcare services. In 1915, Booker T. Washington established the National Negro Health Week to address health disparities. And I have a quote from him that says, there's a certain class of race problem solvers who don't want the patient to get well, because as long as the disease holds out, they have not only an easy means of making a living, but also an easy medium through which to make themselves prominent before the public. And I found that to be so interesting because now those statements are made about the greater population. Haven't you heard that as well, Tara?
Yes, I have. That's why I was interested to read that here. I was like, that sounds familiar.
Yes. It rings familiar and it rings true.
Mm-hmm.
1932 to 1972. That's a big block of time. Distrust in the medical system was rampant, made worse by the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male, where I'm sure many of you have heard of it, that some men were left to rot with syphilis just to see what the outcome would be. But notice the research is new. They called it bad blood. Now, I remember that phrase being used when I was little. They would call everything bad blood. And I didn't really know what that meant, but it was interesting to read this, that it said used to describe several ailments, including syphilis, anemia, fatigue, all of that. And look at the exchange for taking part in the study. Free medical exams, free meals, and burial insurance. because they knew they wouldn't have to feed them long, but they would have to bury them. Isn't that something? The cruelty is really unfathomable.
Absolutely.
In the 1960s, Medicare and Medicaid were established as a result of the civil rights movement, and that brought attention to health disparities. Dr. Martin Luther King said that health inequality is the most shocking and inhumane. And if you've ever been to a nursing home or been to an intensive care unit of a hospital that wasn't really up to par, you can see the lack of concern and the lack of humanity. You know, everyone doesn't have the money to be in a well-established caring space. And some people opt out, even like during COVID. Some people opted to just die at home because they were that distrustful of the system.
Most certainly. The most I've seen of that was actually traveling in South America. I've incidentally traveled a little bit more in South America where that is extremely apparent. Not to say that it isn't here. I just haven't been to those areas. But I lived for a year in Brazil, and the kind of sort of joke is if you go to a public hospital, you know, you very likely could die in the emergency room line. And it is, of course, the very poor who cannot afford anything else, only the public health care, which is opened up my eyes. I think the intention of public health care is very good, but we have to be careful of, you have to be mindful. We can see other examples in the world that public health care can have good intentions, but doesn't always have good results.
Yes, and it's because here, I can only speak for here, it's overrun, it's overcrowded, the doctors are overworked, the nurses are overworked, the support staff is overworked, and I'm pretty sure that people die in the emergency room here. We just don't hear about it.
Yeah, very, especially in populated areas, it sounds like.
Yes.
Populated areas.
Now, in the 1970s, and this was so fascinating to me because the Black Panthers and the Young Lords established food programs and free medical clinics with acupuncture to meet the needs of Black and Brown communities. It became more fascinating when I went to study auricular acupuncture with Walter Bosch and Juan Cortez at On Point in Harlem, New York, and learned the history of acupuncture coming to New York with the help of the Black Panthers and the Young Lords. So this it's a 5-point system on the ear. And it was introduced and is still used to address substance use and chronic stress. But, you know, when I met Walter Bosch, I had to tell him I feel so ashamed because during that time I was younger then and my mind was on other things. And I wasn't in New York. I realized I was in Jersey. Had I been in New York, I might have paid more attention. But that whole section of history had missed my consciousness. So I was happy to finally get the opportunity to round robin and catch up and actually meet one of the icons of that era.
That was the man himself?
Walter Bosch, yes, Bosque. And if you want to know more about that movement, this is the film. You can watch it on YouTube, film Dope is Death. And you'll also see Juan Cortez. He's featured in it as well. In 1983, the Office of Minority Health was established because of the AIDS epidemic. And in 1998, REACH was established, that's Racial and Ethnic Approaches to Community Health, by the Center for Disease Control. And that was to address chronic diseases and promote health equality.
I'm trying to hold off a few questions because I feel like they might be answered at some point here, but uh,
No, go ahead. You can ask if you like.
well, I'm very interested. I mean, because you've lived a lot of life respectfully and in different areas. And I mean, you shared in your other presentations, other classes.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering from your perspective, uh, what of these, or if any of these, have you found to be what has been most effective in actually helping.
Helping.
Well, helping to make sure that everybody is getting the proper treatment. There is not the segregation.
Hmm. Well, that's a whole. It cuts across our education system and everything. It's the whole system. I've often seen people say the whole system would have to be dismantled and put back together because the system was built on a racist premise, you know? And so as band-aids keep being applied, they keep popping off and the pus keeps leaking out, so to speak. You know what I mean? The pus of hatred, the pus of inequality, the pus of ignorance. Okay. So until the wound is cleansed, then we're running around in circles at all times. And you're right. We are going to address a bit of it just to a great extent a little bit later.
Mhm.
But right now, that's what I have to say about it. We're in a cauldron of despair. I would say from what I see around me, because I volunteer up at On Point. That's not on television what I see. You know, we have a terrible drug epidemic in New York and other places. And people, when I get the opportunity to interact with substance users, it becomes more of a humane experience as opposed to, oh my God, what have they done to their lives? And I've been on both sides of the track before I understood. If you don't find yourself immersed in the situation, and guaranteed everybody doesn't have the stomach for it. I didn't know I had the stomach for it. I'm happy I found out I do. That it just becomes a desire to ease the pain. And if
The
you have a way to ease the pain that doesn't involve them hurting themselves more,
mm,
and you know about it, then it needs to be offered. That's where I'm at now.
mhm. And so you do the auricular therapy, the acupuncture, and the other therapies that you offer um, in these. What is it called again?
Well, this is On Point Harm Reduction Center. It's called the Harm Reduction Center, where people are not maligned for their lifestyles. They're just guided through so they don't end up killing themselves, actually, through their behaviors.
Something
The
that if
people, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, what comes to me is so I have family members who have had serious drug abuse issues, and when
Mhm.
it's in your own family, it's especially hard to understand because you see a different. It's easier to have compassion for the person who's not close to you, and you experience some of their the repercussions, right? Or outright lashing out and so forth. And
Or them stealing from you or, bringing
right,
down the quality of your life. And I understand that.
right. And I've said to family members in particular because there's a whole kind of loop of like feeling guilty and um, all sorts of deep emotions like that. And I've said not without heart, but just kind of matter of factly. And I'd be interested to hear your viewpoint on this. And then I'm kind of going off on a tangent, so we'll have to get back
It's
on.
not a tangent, it's the same thing.
It's
Mhm.
related for sure. And I've said before, because when you're related, you can get so you're emotionally enmeshed, right? And I've said, I wonder if I think that there are other people in this world that are the healers that are to help that person, your loved one. A lot of times, if ever, I don't know if family members are the ones that can help heal in that situation because you're so enmeshed. But by God's grace, there's someone else out there that has the skills, has the heart, has the ability, has the drive, and I just think it's absolutely amazing in that way how this world can work, right? Where someone has that, and even love. There has to be some kind of love and care to carry out that kind of work.
Mhm. There is. And what's interesting to also witness is how the substance abusers care for one another.
Mm.
You know, when there's no one else to care for them, they feel they care for one another. They look out for one another. Certainly, that's not always the case. I know there's probably a lot of upsets, but what I'm focusing on is the fact that some of the people who are going through hardships, and that includes like homelessness, the people going through different things who come there. And substance use may just be a part of it or may have been a part of their past. But they have grown spiritually to the point where they know that they have a space to come to where they can get the acupuncture with the needles or the beads. I do also sound healing, and they do sound healing there as well. Reiki, massage, and I'm happy to say Pacific College of Health and Sciences uh, comes out and does full body acupuncture on clients as well. So the help is there, but we probably need more sites like that and more hearts like that because, I mean, Juan, he has a heart so big. One day he was telling me about when it first started, how they used to scale the walls to go to the drug houses, the shooting galleries, they called them, to see if anybody wanted acupuncture. And sometimes a person would be shooting heroin as they were getting the acupuncture. I broke down and cried because the compassion that a person would have to govern this person who's self-destructing right before their eyes, but not intrude upon them and still offer healing was just, it took me out. He looked up and I was bawling like a baby because it's wonderful to know that there is that kind of compassion on this earth. It's rare,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So when
For
you
sure.
come in contact with it, you've been blessed and that
Absolutely.
you're in precious company.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, we could say a lot more, but let's see what else you have and then
Okay. But I'm
comment.
glad that we took the time to expound upon that because just in case anyone is watching who needs to help someone that they know, the address is 104 East 126th Street in Harlem. Okay.
Wonderful.
On point. Mhm. So now, 21st century healthcare concerns. Rising healthcare costs. We hear about it all the time. Disparity in access to adequate healthcare, especially in minority populations. I see it all the time. Chronic diseases, mental health issues. I put those in red because we're going to talk more about that later. The aging population often has multiple health issues and requires more intensive and specialized care. Shortages in the healthcare workforce, like the doctor spoke about that before, nurses and allied health workers, and the opioid crisis. Before it was the crack epidemic, right? So we go from one drug to another.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about the flower essences. Talked about the problem.
Mhm.
Now we're going to look about possible solutions. And this is my offering for Juneteenth. I've been wanting to do this for a while. Opal Lee, a 97-year-old American retired teacher, counselor, and activist, spearheaded the movement to make Juneteenth a federally recognized holiday. She's often described as the grandmother of Juneteenth. And President Joe Biden signed a Senate bill making Juneteenth the 11th federal holiday on June 17th, 2021. This whole history brought this book to mind for me. Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, America's Legacy of Enduring Injury and Healing by Joy DeGroy Leary. The quote that I chose from her states, although slavery has long been a part of human history, American chattel slavery represents a case of human trauma incomparable in scope, duration, and consequence to any other incidents of human enslavement. And what she meant by that, and I've come to learn, and as I've observed over the years, especially when this book first came out, I started paying more attention, that you could begin to understand why there's so much pain. Elders who are still alive, like in their 90s, a lot of them have experienced what's in the books. You know, they're living history. So it's ongoing. And it's being ignored. And it's in our DNA. So I find that we have to work from where Dr. Edward Bach worked from, the emotions, the internal, and see if we can't help ourselves with self-help and self-care and self-love one by one. When I take the mobile clinic out, I use flower essences in the herbal tea blends that I make. Or I teach people about the flower essences, and we do the sublingual application of flower essences. And I teach them of how a particular flower essence would affect their energetics based on whatever emotional imbalance or disturbance they're dealing with. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, this is a great opportunity and reason to bring flower essences to the front of the stage. And it's for everyone, no particular culture, but I really want it for my people. And not many people know about flower essences. They know about herbal tea. Maybe some might know about tinctures, but I don't often hear about flower essences from people. More often than not, they'll say, "What is that?" Oh, okay, and they'll listen so intently, and then they say, "Well, I want to try that one." Well, I did a clinic earlier this year, and I've always thought yarrow to be the perfect flower essence for my culture as a whole. And so instead of evaluating the people, I had 6 flower essences on the table. And I told them, intuitively choose one. And I would say out of 20 people, 17 chose yarrow.
Wow. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Joe Dispenza from Becoming Supernatural, How Common People Are Doing the Uncommon, says this: if you focus on the known, you get the known. If you focus on the unknown, you create a possibility. So one of the questions that comes up to me, it's posed to me, is how do I deal with people when they say they don't believe in herbs or they act as if they don't believe in herbs? I tell them the herb is going to work whether you believe it or not. So just try it. And in that moment, they create the possibility. Same with flower essences. You don't have to believe it'll work. Try it. Anyone can take it. You could be on a medication and there are no contraindications because it's the plant material and water. Okay.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. It's like it's technically nothing. I mean, if they were to go under a microscope, they just see water and maybe a few alcohol molecules, but there's like nothing in it. It's technically energetic medicine. It has been classified as homeopathics. And so it's like at the same time you could say, oh, it's nothing, but it's like so much. It's
so much.
Until you experience it, it's just mind-boggling.
Yes, it is. And I have experienced it firsthand. I'll talk more about that in a moment.
Okay.
Next slide.
Oh, it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured out before it has to play its way through.
Mm-hmm. It's okay.
It's pretty. Okay, I think I'm going to manually have to go to the next slide.
Yeah, manually. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'll be right back. Yeah, flower essences, when people are like, what are flower essences? The way I explain it is that, it's really incredible. Like we know if you give flowers to someone, that roses, even by the different colors, have different meanings, right?
That's right.
Or if you give someone a daisy, that would mean something else. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and even when you receive that, you get kind of that emotional sentiment along with it, which is, to me, I think,
actually giving them energy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
spirit.
That's how
you're giving them you're infusing them with the spirit of the plant.
Right. Mm-hmm. Sorry, just a moment. I'm not accustomed to
the
videos, and they kind of have a mind of their own.
All the time.
There
I
we
hope
go.
everyone is getting, what they need from this presentation.
Me too. Let's see.
So, as we move forward, we're going to talk about the energy of water, the power of water. And, I surmise that that's a part of why the flower essences work as well. I don't know if any of you have are aware of the scientists who looked at water under a microscope after positive words were spoken and then negative words were spoken. We're going to look at that next.
Yeah.
How the crystalline formations change. Beautiful under positive incantations and broken and warped in the face of negativity. And if you think about the body, since we're made of mostly water too, that can affect us as well. Our environment can affect us. Whenever I want to lighten my spirit, I go by a moving body of water. Mm-hmm.
Here we go. I'm just going to get the slides that sorry, that video
right.
threw us off a little bit.
I was tempted to use a still slide, but I just love the energy that moving slide gave for the message that was on it.
It was beautiful. Okay, they're uploading. It'll just be a moment.
So in this time, let me just, Prince, come over and tell the people happy Juneteenth like I promised you.
Oh, great
Prince
time.
is my 7-year-old great grandson, and I promised him that I'd let him say happy Juneteenth. So,
Happy Juneteenth.
yeah, stand up so they can see your little face.
Hey, Prince.
Hi.
There are a lot more other people here, but you can only see me. Good to see you. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Okay. All right, go back and play. Thank you.
There we go. And skip ahead. Hopefully don't get hung up on the video again.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and that's Prince, that cute little
Yes,
guy.
that's Prince, right? Mm-hmm.
Handsome.
Doing some drumming.
I love seeing your Facebook photos with him too. It looks like you're a fun grandma.
Thank you. Yeah. He keeps me going.
There we go.
So, first developed by Dr. Edward Bach in the 1930s, which I think that it is so magnificent that this has lasted through time and works. I swear by flower essences. They're liquids made by steeping flowers in water for a period of time to imprint the plant's vibrational signature into the water. My friend Jennifer Ann Tucker, the flower essence practitioner, and she often sends me photographs of her as she prepares her flower essences. It's so beautiful. In 1994, using high-speed photography, Japanese scientist Dr. Masaru Emoto did an experiment with water and concluded that water has feelings. Flower essences are safe and effective as they are based on plant-derived vibrational energetics supported by the element of water to address emotional and mental imbalance.
It sounds incredible. It actually is. It's one of those things you just gotta try it.
You have to try it. And before I begin to share the flower essences with you, I do want to say that I had heard about Rescue Remedy. That's the 5-flower formula that he has. And I did it because teaching in academia was so stressful. It pained me that homework was just the bane of the student's existence, because homework allows you to have a conversation with the teacher when you come back to class. If you don't do that work, then the teacher becomes a talking head. And I realized, I said, well, Carolyn, you cannot change them. You can influence them, you can't change them. You can only change yourself. So to get rid of that anxiety, I started using Rescue Remedy. And it really meant something to me when I read that one of the flowers, Star of Bethlehem, helped with traumas even in childhood, which I had a very tumultuous childhood. So I said, I'm going to try this. And I found over time, it's been a number of years now, I take it. I even give it to Prince. He's not undergoing any type of trauma or anything, but I'm hoping that it will begin to infuse in him the strength he needs as he moves closer into coming of age, and the fact that he knows about it couldn't hurt. Mm-hmm. We use the pastellis. We don't use the drops, the little gummies. Mm-hmm. And they come in different flavors, but it comes in drops, cream, spray. There's even there's a formula for pets. So if your pet had surgery or something, or is anxious for moving, or whatever the reason might be, you can administer Rescue Remedy for pets and calm the animal down. I've done it for a cat that had surgery and had the collar on, And it was something trying to get it in her, but once I got it in her, she was calm,
Yeah.
like it was done. Mm-mm.
Just as soon as
So,
we started talking about
mhm.
animals, my cat started meowing.
Oh, okay. Said you talking about me and my people?
It's
That's
amazing. I've just pet it. Like I'll put a couple drops on my hand and I'll pet it and get it on their ears so that it does get into the system through their thin skin on their ears.
yes, topical. That's nice.
Yeah,
It works. It calms them down.
it's
Mhm.
amazing. Halona is
It-
asking, are flower essences, are they different from essential oils?
yes, yes. Essential oils, contrary to what's said in some circles, they should not be ingested because you could burn your insides. I'm also a certified aromatherapist, and the school of thought that I was trained under, you don't ingest essential oils. Uh, you get a terrible burn, and if you don't believe me, all you have to do is go on YouTube. I'm not YouTube. Go on Google and put in "burn some essential oils," and I'm almost positive you don't want your insides or outsides to look like that. It should always be cut with carrier oil. Flower essences, as we said, are based in water. Very gentle,
Mhm.
and it's tasteless. It
Mhm.
doesn't have a taste.
I love taking them in water throughout the day. If I'm taking one,
Yeah.
unless it's an acute situation, but it's amazing how it helps. And what was I going to say? I find the flower essences more effective than essential oils personally for like the emotional effect, especially. I think essential oils are really touted um, for being very helpful in the emotional realm.
hmm
I personally, flower essences work better for me.
hmm Well, I find that I have to put them on the same pedestal because I learned about essential oils before I learned about flower essences, long before. And
Mhm.
I would use grapefruit oil. I would put it on. I didn't know anything about cutting it with a carrier oil at the time, but I wasn't putting it on my skin directly because I knew it would sting. I would put it on a wet, hot washcloth and inhale the steam to relax myself before I went to do my 9 to 5.
Mm, yeah.
Operative word being 9 to 5. No, I'm
Yes.
just cracking jokes. I could do that now. I'm retired. you know. But yes, baby, I know you know. I hear. What is your kitty cat's name?
That one, she's Magi, Majesty Sapphire.
Oh, so nice. Beautiful
Mhm.
name. Yeah, so yes, flower essences and essential oils must be used differently and are quite different.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Would you
Now,
like to keep going?
sure, sure. Now, what I do on these slides is I indicate how it's used as an herb and then how it's used as a flower essence. So, yarrow is used for treating wounds and fevers, among other things. As a flower essence, it adjusts patterns of imbalance that indicate extreme vulnerability to others and to the environment. If you're easily depleted, and if you're overly absorbent of negative influence and psychic toxicity. In other words, if you've not learned yet how to create a barrier between you and the outside world so that these energies don't attack your psyche and make you imbalanced and unhappy. The positive qualities that it brings forth over time, it supports a luminous and strong auric field. It supports your ability to be compassionate, and you can create an inclusive sensitivity. In other words, you can be sensitive without collapsing under that sensitive, without overcaring. Overcaring is a problem. And we often overcare with our relatives, often our friends, and sometimes, depending on the person, with the general public. I had to tell one of my elder friends yesterday that it was time to let go of a situation that she was aggravating herself about, that was somebody else's situation. It had nothing to do with her, but she was slowly talking herself into taking it on. And she thanked me. She said, yeah, sometimes somebody has to be reminded by some kind person to pull back, you know. I love my hallelujah corner. You know, I love cats. I have a hallelujah corner. Thank you, sweetheart. I think she said amen. Go ahead.
She is. Yes. You want to say hi? I learned from an herbalist, because it's easy for me to be very sensitive to the outer world and individuals and groups. And, especially, fortunately, I think we're coming out of the COVID era, but that was tough for everybody. And during that time, this herbalist taught me, so yarrow, as I know you know, is the Achillea millefolium. So thousand cut leaves. As you see in the photo there, the leaf is actually lots of teeny tiny leaves, or in ancient times it would have been one leaf, but it's serrated, or not serrated, but actually cut into tiny pieces. And so it's also known as the carpenter's herb, where they keep it in the corner just as protection against cuts, because it's very well known for stopping bleeding of very deep cuts. And so, we have the phrase that it's a death by 1,000 cuts, right? And this herbalist picked up that I was feeling very sensitive. I was reacting to lots of little cuts. And when you do a podcast, you have lots of people's energy coming at you. And also, it's all what I've made up in my head. I might be thinking this person or these people are thinking this. So it doesn't even have to be real. It can even be your own imaginations. And she taught me to just put even a drop of the tincture. Now, the flower essence works amazingly as well, but even a drop of the tincture rubbed on, not even the whole body, just like a little bit on a forearm. And it just like took away that pressure and the chatter in the head and just the feeling. I can't even describe it. You have to experience it to know the difference when you're that kind of person. It's absolutely amazing.
Yes, yes. I'm glad you mentioned tinctures. I love tinctures. I have stress relief, ashwagandha, and I think blue vervain at my bedside now. And these are things that you can keep nearby, where if you're having a restless night, or if you had a worrisome day, it happens sometimes, you don't have to live in that space. You have to allow yourself time to recover. Because if you continue to live in that space, that's chronic stress. And chronic stress kills. So one of the things that I would like, I determined as a New Yorker, everything moves so fast. And I deliberately, for many years, walked slow, so that I could see what's happening around me. And you keep from having a lot of accidents. I have my fair share of walking slow. That's besides the point. But when you are constantly flustered and constantly aggravated, that's not a joyous life. You have to create your joy. And you certainly don't do it by being insensitive to yourself and others.
Insensitive, I think that's part of the word that came to mind when you were first describing yarrow, is When you're very sensitive, you can go either way. You keep being very sensitive, or you shut yourself down. You
Mhm.
build up
Yes.
layers, right? And the blocks, so that what you perceive as hurting you can't get at you. But what I've learned the hard way too, when you do that, you also block the good stuff from coming in.
Mhm.
So
True.
lots of good reasons perfect, great herb to start with.
Mhm.
Yarrow. Would you like to continue?
Yes, please.
All right.
Star of Bethlehem, which is used for trauma and shock and provides comfort to neutralize distress. The pattern of imbalance is shock or trauma, either recent or from a past experience, the need for healing and comfort from the spiritual world. The positive qualities is you unify with the deepest part of yourself and you recognize your sense of inner divinity and wholeness. And I think this is very important, especially on this day, as we think about our ancestors and the ancestral strength, not negating the ancestral oppression, but think of the strength that it took to come through that for us to be here today. Okay. Um, it's amazing that we're even here and that we survived, but we did. And we bring blessings to the world as a result through that pain and through that wisdom. Next one.
All right.
Rock Rose. And you know, when we spoke, I told you I didn't know which ones I was going to bring forth. So now you'll see what came to me. Rock Rose is beneficial for acute fear, panic, and anxiety. And the patterns of imbalance are gripping terror, panic, fear of death, lack of embodiment and presence. The positive qualities are grounding when facing adversity, ability to assume control in catastrophic situations. And I chose that one because we hear so much about the deaths of Black men and women for no apparent reason, still ongoing. We have that history of lynching during the Jim Crow era. And there's a book, Black Faces, White Spaces, where the author talks about the fear associated with forests and spaces like that, because there's so much of a history where so many horrible things happen to Black people on trees, you know, the burnings, the lynchings, the chasing through the forest, the hiding, you know, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, all these people that we've heard about. It's one thing to read about the history, talk about the history in such a matter of fact way, but if you allow your imagination, your spirit to really take a trip back into those times and put yourself in those shoes and think about how you would feel having to traverse dangerous swamps and places of that nature just for your mere survival. And, you know, very often you hear Black men speaking on television about being stopped by the police and the nervousness that occurs before they have to show their identification or whatever, or even like Amadou Diallo, I'll never forget him, where he was pulling out his wallet and got shot 27, 28 times, you know. So this fear is pervasive where, unfortunately, we're going to have to share that history even with my great grandson. we're going to have to teach him how to behave in the face of law enforcement. There was a wonderful author and activist. Now I don't know what her last name. I forgot her last name, but I know her first name was Carol. She wrote the Little Black Book, and I know somebody listening on here has heard of her. If you remember, or if you can help us out here, just put it in the comments or something to jog my memory. I did a little bit of work with her for a while. She talked about the IQ, the racial IQ of people. She would give a test so that people could test themselves to see where they fit as far as their racial IQ. And she had the Little Black Book. She would just fill it with the names of Black people who had died over the years. That's all it was. That's the only text it was. It was just the names, you know? And it's a real thing. So that particular flower essence is what came to mind, where we don't live in the fear. We're just aware of the circumstance.
That's interesting too, because I know when I'm reacting out of fear or living in fear, you're continuing the pattern. You're more likely to react in continuing whatever pattern that is. If in fear, usually it's not a pattern that you want to keep.
Right.
Right. So it helps you. What is amazing about flower essences, like many of us have learned, talk therapy can be helpful, but sometimes you don't know what's inside, especially when it's generational. And just speaking from my own generational stuff, you don't know it's in there until someone points it out, like, wow, you keep doing this.
Right.
And it's so ingrained. And so that's where talk therapy can't quite get to unless it comes to your awareness. But flower essences can help you when you're in that uncomfortable feeling, but you don't know where it's coming from, to help you to break those patterns, in my experience. How about you?
Yes, I totally agree. And Kitty Cat agrees too. Yeah, it's true. We don't know from whence we came in total, okay? But we do know some of it. And as we live, and if we pay attention, it's very important to not just live life without paying attention to how it's manifesting, what you're manifesting, and what has been manifested in you that you might want to get rid of or keep. And as you go through time, you can begin to sort through and more readily choose modalities such as a flower essence to help guide you through. I never liked an uncomfortable cure. I always like gentle cures. And Matthew made a statement one time. I forgot exactly what we were talking about, but the statement that he mentioned was, we were talking about a herbal blend for someone. And he said, and you don't want to give them bitters because they're already in a bitter situation. You see, so I just thought that was very insightful from an herbalist point of view, to be careful about the remedies you suggest, also looking at how the person is situated emotionally.
Well, to quote him also, well, not exactly quote him, but paraphrase, he has mentioned, which I think is really insightful, and what you're talking about is herbs can actually help you go back in time and help you to relieve what is ailing you. And he brings up a physical example, but through my experience, I think it can actually go back to the emotional as well. And his example is, when he was a kid, he had strep throat all the time. And it kind of continued into his adulthood, and it occurred to him one day, well, what would I have as he was becoming an herbalist, it occurred to him, what would I have taken then to help that situation? And I believe it was sage, but he took it, and that, like, he didn't have reoccurring strep throat from then on. And so it was that concept that came to him, that you can take an herb now for something that ailed you years ago that's still affecting you. And I think we both agree that it can happen. You can do that multi-generationally too, even if it was something that, a family trauma, cultural trauma, that absolutely amazingly an herb now can help with that.
Yeah, I think that was so very, as you said, insightful to say, what herb would I have taken then? Yes, it's important to know yourself that way. And take the time with yourself, that quiet time, to get to know you. A lot of people know others way better than they know themselves. But there's a whole worlds inside of you that you've not even tapped into yet. And they're worth getting to know.
Beautifully said. Would you like to continue?
Sure.
All right, what's next?
Honeysuckle. I love honeysuckle as an oil too. It smells so good. As an herb, it helps those who are nostalgic or stuck in the past, encouraging them to live in the present. So it's important to remember good things, but it's also important to live in the now, because the now is all there is. Patterns of imbalance would be staying in that nostalgic past with emotional attachment to the past, longing for prior conditions which seem more appealing. Okay. I know in the good old days, well, in the good old days, we had to get up and go to the library. That's okay. I used to tell my students, I don't understand why you don't want to go to the library. You don't have to brush your teeth. All you have to do is go to the computer, and log in. All right. So the good old days have certainly some wondrousness attached to it, also some pain, but to stay in the now and see how the good old days could be improved by the now is important. Being fully in the present, acceptance of current life conditions. Many people are having a problem. They're struggling with technology. I struggle with it at times, but I keep a young person around. They know everything. Okay. So there are ways to do that. I would urge my elders to not be afraid of technology, because you only very often make your life more difficult fighting it. Okay. And there's something to be said with keeping up with the times. You can maintain, look, I still have a landline, but I have a cell phone as well. I can't say that I know all of the functions, but I can function. Okay. And there's a benefit to both. Why do I keep a landline? Because when we had the blackout, everyone with the cell phone couldn't get a line. It was a breakdown in communication. My landline worked. And it was perfect because at that time I had had surgery, and the visiting nurse needed to be in contact with me, and she was able to reach me so she could come and change my dressing on that day. So everything has its benefit. You keep what you feel works for you, but certainly don't negate the now, because it's going to be whether you accept it or not.
Indeed. Yep.
Willow. Willow is my favorite tree. Good for releasing resentment and bitterness, fostering forgiveness and acceptance. I love hugging willow trees. The patterns of imbalance that it addresses are feeling resentful, rigid emotional memories, which turn to bitterness, tendency to blame others, and see oneself as the victim. Positive qualities are acceptance, forgiveness, taking responsibility for one's life situation, adaptable to changing fortunes and circumstances. So without change, you can't improve your situation too. That's the other thing. So you have to remain flexible.
Yeah, the are they leaves? Are they branches or a bit of both? I mean, it just symbolizes that, right? Being able to go with the flow, and
Yeah.
it's just beautiful and graceful.
Blowing in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
Walnut. I thought this was interesting. It supports those going through major life changes and provides protection from outside influences while helping to adapt. The patterns of imbalance are overly influenced by the social expectations or values of family or community, past experiences or beliefs. And I find a lot of people are living based on the values put in place by their family or community, and they're unhappy as a result. They've not yet found their voice. The positive qualities that it supports are freedom from limiting influences, making healthy transitions in life, accumulating inner strength to follow one's own path and destiny.
I've been listening to a very interesting book called Wanting that is very much about that. It's about memetics and how where the word meme comes from, and how we just naturally as a human, babies, we learn by mimicking, right? And so it's just very natural to us to be that way, to look to our neighbors and think, oh, I should have that. I want that. Or on Instagram or Facebook, because it's ingrained in us. That's how we learn. But it's also, it has its negative side, right? Where we think, oh, my cousin went to this college or went this way in life, or my sibling, and I have to do that too. And it's really, yeah, to have an aid in breaking from that could be amazing.
Yes, yes.
It's so prevalent these days. So I think we all could use a dose.
Yes. So I just wanted to do a bit of a testimony here. And I wrote, over the past 20 years, flower essences helped me ground myself as I navigated my own trauma. They helped me create space for all of my thoughts and allow me the grace to sort through them, discarding the ones that will not serve me in a positive way. It's an application, as I mentioned before, of faith. A lot of times we talk about faith, we just throw the word faith around in the churches. Have faith, have faith, have faith. But what does that mean? Faith means nothing if you don't apply it. And it takes courage to apply faith, because that means you're delving into the unknown. Emotional and mental health is the foundation for a healthy physical experience. If your emotions, well, let me say this, your emotional and mental health can drive you to be sick physically. Because I chose clarity, I chose sanity, and I chose peace, I am able to speak with you all today. It didn't have to be that way. Many people who have suffered the traumas that I have suffered have not made it. So I feel very happy and privileged to be able to share this information. I use flower essences, and I really, really am an advocate for the use of flower essences for grief, for anticipated grief. A lot of people are caregivers, and they are dealing with hospice type situations. Also, even in the loss of a partner from a breakup in a relationship, you know, those are the times instead of languishing and self-medicating in a negative way, turn to flower essences, turn to affirmation. If you have to get talk therapy, choose a responsible source and get that talk therapy. But there are means of self-care out here that you can not only get pleasure from, but be in the company of some wonderful people while you're doing it. I was first introduced to meditation through gong meditation. Devia was my meditation teacher, and I would go up to Harlem. Everyone would have their little blanket or mat and would lay it out in a big room, and we received gong uh, sound therapy, you know, and everyone would get up refreshed. So it's a way to not be lonely. Loneliness has consumed a lot of people, and they try to solve it through the internet. You know, I enjoy social media as well, but I certainly enjoy connecting with my community. You had mentioned that that I'm well known in the community, and a wonderful traveling writer, Halana Black. I do a Wednesday meditation with her every Wednesday morning, and I was sharing with them that I've lived where I live now for 40 years, and I'm sort of addicted to being able to go outside and know people, and they know me, and we love one another, you know, and we care for one another. So there's that. There's your family, and then there's the community. And if you attract the right people and put yourself around the right people, you can not only move forward in your personal life, you can move forward in your professional life. But seek the unknown. Don't be afraid of the unknown. That's how I came to know Matt. I sought the unknown.
It seems to me in the relatively short time that I've known you, I mean, it's still been at least over a year. My impression also is that you know love, because I don't even know if I can explain it, but I just get that sense in a few instances where how I've seen you respond to certain situations. Is like, oh, that, and it's not like a love, like gushy kind of love. It's like, it's a centeredness. And I think also in what we were talking about earlier, whether it's family or cultural trauma, so many people have been dealing with trauma, and to really know love, and I think love for your neighbor, you know, it doesn't have to be that gushy kind of love, but just you know, walk a mile in their shoes, you know, just even imagine that, maybe sitting and listening to what it's like instead of talking, you know, just hear out what they have to say. And I think we find out that we're more alike than different. So many of us are hurt and have suffered or are suffering, and we can relate more. Not that I don't like to get into like victim competitions, you know, I don't, but
No,
we share our
you can't get off this planet without being hurt.
right, right. And to realize that and be more empathetic rather than responding in your own trauma responses, we can get a lot further. We can.
And it's spiritual growth. Everyone doesn't grow at the same rate because of what you just described. I remember when I was that person, but I don't even know that person anymore. But I had to sit and read books about personality and personality disorders. I had to own some of it and look at how I would want to change it and how I would want people to respond to me and how I chose to respond to people to keep myself grounded and not allow myself to get in a situation where somebody just has me over the top and out of my character, or at least out of the character I want to be, because we all have the various characters, There's the horror flick character, there's the nun character, We can play all of those roles at any given time, but which one do you want to be remembered for?
You have some closing thoughts on your slides. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. You have your cited work.
Right. I just wanted to let people know that if they want to learn more about water and its personality, the book that they could read, and also if they want to learn more about flower essences, the Flower Essence Society has, of course, expanded upon Dr. Edward Bach's work, and they have a whole encyclopedia there of flower essences A to Z that you can go online and just have yourself a ball. And I just want to say this about flower essences: it makes you sit down and evaluate yourself.
Yes.
Right.
But not in a frightening kind of way.
No.
Right? Not like someone's across from you telling you all your bad traits.
Right.
It's very comfortably self-reflective.
And it's also a gentle language as well as a gentle treatment.
And what we haven't said also, it's rather affordable. So yes, you can get a tiny bottle, I think these days, still for about $8, probably depends on where you live. Bach flowers, a larger bottle, I think they're probably going for 20 something, but that will last forever. And you can get a lot of neighborhoods have like a Whole Foods or a co-op, and you can order them online as well. So they're very easy to get, is my point.
Yes, they are. And my motto for the Healing Project is love life, live life, and love.
Tell us about the Healing Project, please.
The Healing Project, I always joke and say, I call it the Healing Project because I'm the project. I started all of this to heal myself. Because whatever I share, are modalities that I've used on myself and they've worked. So that way, then my work is really a living testimony. And when I speak to people about using them, I can speak from the heart because I know for sure that it works. And what I do with the Healing Project, I do presentations at senior citizen centers, also schools. We just did an aroma bar through Centonomy, a company that is founded by McCabe Lloyd. I'm the director of wellness for that company. And we did an aroma bar for Teacher Appreciation Day at a charter school in Brooklyn. And we also do aromatherapy, lectures. And I serve herb teas when I go out. I take my tuning forks with me. This Saturday, I'll be going out. And I custom design my presentations for the space. So this Saturday, I'll be going out to the People's Church. And we're going to have Reiki and massage. And I have a little room that I set up like a little temple. And I'll be reading rune stones and color cards. You mentioned colors and their meaning. We're going to talk about that. And I'm going to make an herbal tea blend and stuff. And I want to thank Herbalists Without Borders for supplying me with the materials I need, the herbs, the supplements, the oils, to go out into the community and share what I know and apply what I know. So yeah, that's what I do besides teaching for Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, and I also teach for the Washington Institute of Natural Medicine. So education is my focus. I came in actually, it's my transferable skill. I worked in academia for over 20 years. And then when I became an herbalist and then started getting my other certifications, I said, well, what do I love doing most? I love teaching most. So I even do sip and paint at the center, teaching people how to paint, because that's a therapy as well. Anything that brings a person to a point of relaxation and getting to know themselves better and loving themselves more, that's what I'm involved in with the Healing Project.
That's a perfect summary. As you were talking, I was thinking, Carolyn sounds like a traveling field trip. Like she comes to you and you get the holistic field trip come to your location. Like, doesn't that sound like fun?
Yeah, if I could get more field trips going, I would love to take people on outings, you know. But I tell them about them because even here in New York, people don't they don't ferry hop. I mean, ferry hopping is so much fun. You go from one end of the city to the other on a ferry, and you've had a boat ride, you know? And depending on which ferry it is, you've been on the water for an hour and a half. That's enough to cleanse anybody's aura.
That sounds like great fun. Well, Carolyn, I love talking with you. Mostly I love listening. And what I appreciate too is each time we've talked, like you said, you've strived to like walk slowly. And in New York, I mean, that is got to be like a challenge. And I find myself kind of coming into a new cadence, which is very healthy and helpful for me because I tend to go be quick on things. So not only thank you for what you had to share, but thank you for your presence. I think that's what we need. It's not only the information, it's the feeling, learning the feeling.
Mhm.
And I accidentally cut off my access to my screen, so I'm gonna have to give my last screen. I'll have to paint a picture here. Please head on over to the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. We have 3 wonderful courses with Carolyn there. As you can see, she has so much to share and give, and this was a free class, and imagine what her paid classes are like. So we have Black Folk Herbalism, which is tremendously insightful. We also have kitchen remedies, culinary remedies, of the African American kitchen, and then of course, the class on death, dying, and grief, which, you know, we all go through it, death, dying, and grief. It sounds like a tough subject, but I highly encourage you to go there and check it out before you need it, because it's, death is a part of our life. And when you have the tools for any of these to go through what we naturally go through in life, it'll make it that much easier. Through Sunday, we have a 50% off coupon going on, and just type in the code juneteenthherbs and you'll get 50% off those courses. And hint, hint, stay tuned. We'll probably be doing something for 4th of July because that's also Independence Day, and why not group together Independence Days? But this might be the better deal, so jump in now. And thanks again, Carolyn. I look forward to the next time. I don't know what we have in store, but I look forward to it.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Have a wonderful day, and give a hug to that cutie little prince for me.
Okay. Prince, come say bye-bye. Come on. He's flying over here too. He loves a screen. Stand up over here so he can see.
Bye, Prince.
Bye, Tara.
You have a great day with your grandma.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Thank you, Sarah. Bye-bye. See everybody.